thank you, Richard, for having us.
No,
Sláinte.
so always a pleasure. Sláinte.
We are going to talk a wee bit about GlenAllachie Distillery and your involvement in R&D projects. And it's really just to help others in the industry understand a bit about your journey and experience. So please tell us a wee bit about the distillery first.
Okay, distillery started in 1967. It was part of a little bit of a boom in whisky production where people wanted to get into it to produce whisky for blending. And that went on for a number of years, ultimately culminating in the point where Billy Walker bought the distillery over 5 years ago and took it really from that blend sector into the single malt sector. And that required a real change in the profile and what we were trying to do with the spirit, and a lot of work that we needed to do there. So what we've actually done is we've taken this great distillery, fantastic history, well designed, well laid out, with great provenance, and we've taken this chance to put our own fingerprint on it and change the profile of the spirit, taking it from blend into that single malt that you see in front of you. This, I believe, a 13-year-old Oloroso finish, so lots of character.
Now, when we met a few years ago, R&D was something on the radar, but it wasn't something you'd put your foot on the pedal with.
Yeah.
Now that you've been actively claiming, it would be great if you could share a wee bit about what types of projects have qualified and what sort of activity you've gone through.
Yeah, I think if I just pick up on the first comment, yeah, for us it was a little bit scary. You know, we looked at this R&D sector, we knew there's R&D tax credit. I perhaps thought mostly that it was like true research, something you might actually find in a university or a college or something that was doing that, which I suppose it can be, but for us it was different research. It was research into the process and the product on site that we were doing. So took that on board, but also realised we needed to speak to somebody that knew what they were about. It's difficult. You've got all these hoops to jump through, all this level of complexity. And if you're not really being shown how to do that, then you've got a real challenge, because you can't be 100% comfortable that what you're doing is exactly there.
Absolutely.
So started speaking to obviously the right people, and worked away with that and looked at different projects, took some advice from you guys of what you thought should count as well, and what we were already doing, and to see what the best is. So we looked at novel wood styles. So there's a lot of whisky maturation, a lot of that happening in all these different classic woods, Oloroso being a really good example, PX. But what we felt is let's challenge ourselves and take ourselves into wood varieties that haven't necessarily been used in the industry, so you couldn't be completely confident. And that's the key thing.
Absolutely.
You're actually going beyond and getting something. And we chose something like Chinkapin. It had been used once or twice, not a lot, certainly new to us. It hadn't been used. And this is a big risk. Put a lot of whiskey into a lot of wood, expensive wood, doesn't actually come out as you had anticipated, you've got a problem. But actually, a little bit of confidence, you're going to get a little bit of money back from putting that effort in, which is always quite nice. It offsets the costs and helps you to make these projects worthwhile and worth doing, on top of already wanting to be interested in what the spirit was going to be like. So.
Perfect. And that's a really good point to make. I mean, you're not doing this for the R&D tax. You're doing it because it's a passion within the industry, it's a passion within the business. But it's just a nice bonus that these natural projects that you're embarking on get you a nice juicy payout.
Yeah, no, and there's no doubt about it. It helped us. It just at the end, because all we got did is the money that we got from the R&D tax credit went back into more projects.
Yep.
It really did exactly what it said and what it was designed for. It allowed us to focus on the next level of project and say, okay, we've done a project on the Chinkapin wood. Okay, let's look at things like extra long fermentation times. You can see them, and you can take and you can read papers from around the world and make a confident assumption that it should work here, but you still can't be certain. So things like going from standard fermentation length of time to over 160 hours, almost 7 days of fermentation. That's risk, but something that's actually for us not research, but it's development. So it's looking at the different sector as well. So that was another one. We're also now looking at projects to do with energy, and we're trying to look at those with a view to saying, how can we develop new processes in conjunction with engineering firms and develop new systems and do research to make sure that not just are we saving energy, but we're also at the same time making sure the spirit is the quality that we need it to be. And that's ultimately the goal. There's no point in doing research projects or development projects and not being comfortable with the product at the end of it. I think, you know, we've looked at certain levels, and some projects probably wouldn't qualify for the R&D tax credit that we've looked at. And that's the advice that we get from the experts that come from your side, that come in and speak to us, and they say, no, this you know is being done somewhere else, or there's enough information in the scientific domain that actually allows you to do it. So things like top dressing with different yeasts, probably not far enough out there. But things like the new varieties of wood that we've used beyond the chinkapin, we're now looking at varieties that aren't commonly used, different places that it's being grown, taking it into the industry, all within the boundaries of the Scotch whisky regulations, are always challenging and always being looked at, and we're always constantly looking for more things to do as well.
So something I would really love your insight on would be, what do you think the distilling industry thinks about R&D tax credits? What, you know, do you find it's talked about enough? Do you find it's claimed by the big boys but not the small ones? What's your take?
I mean, I think there's no secret. The big guys, you know, the very big companies, multi-site, multi-product, global brands, global site, are in there already. They're already doing it. They've been doing it for years, and they've been doing it very successfully because they've been driven that way, and they're doing huge amount of development. It might be development in packaging. It might be development in production. You know, there's all of the different aspects. It might be development in energy, or research and development in energy solutions as well, much in the same way as we've talked about. So you can see these guys, they're already there. What it is, if you talk about a small company like ourselves, what we've got something like 30 to 35 employees, or even a smaller company, something like got 10 or below, there's always an area that's researched. There's always an area that's developed. There's always an area that you can be looking at. And really, you have to take that time to say, what are we going to get from this? And obviously, it's a chance to add some more money into the pot. Your money goes further if you can actually get the tax credit, so you can develop even more, which is great if you're a new company. Absolutely. If you're getting into a position where you can actually say, do you know what, I'd have loved to have done these projects, and I've actually got the money to do that, then that's fantastic. And that's where we probably have been lucky, just at the right size. And I'd seen it happen in another couple of companies I'd worked for, and I knew that they were really interested in it. So they actually got involved. So one of them was a malting company, and we had talked about new varieties of barley that were coming through the system. That's development. That's a little bit of research at their end, and then it's development work. So we tied into that. We took new varieties in. All the small distillers could be looking for those new varieties and new aspects.
And you know, I suppose it's worth your while even having the conversation with a specialist before you even think of starting the project, because it's sort of worthwhile just running the by. Listen, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Does it fall under the R&D spec? And then a professional can say, listen, this part sounds like it's business as usual, but this part, oh, you really seem like you're onto something. That kind of gives them that bit of, you know, encouragement before they begin spending the money. Yeah, actually, there's a bonus to this.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. There's a lot about you think, and even in an industry like this, that's as traditional as it is, we probably always a little bit resistant. We always think, oh, somebody's done that before us. But they've never done it on your site, and they've never done it in the way that you're going to do it. And each individual distillery is, by nature, different, and will have a different reaction. The spirit is different, the quality parameters that you're going to put into it are different. So actually, does it work for you? You really need to check with an expert.
No, that's good. That's good advice, yeah. So really, just to finish off, you've been enjoying the R&D benefit now for a few years, and you're still claiming. What has it done for the business? Has it allowed you to be a bit more adventurous? Have you reinvested it back in?
I think undoubtedly. I think it's allowed us to look at the extra projects at the edge that we wouldn't have maybe had time for. We've actually been able to say, look, actually we've got the money that's come back from this. We can put that into the next project, or we can put the time in, because actually we can afford to spend the money on staff to take that into position as well. If nothing else, it helps to pay people's wages, which means that you can employ more people, which again is a great situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, perfect answer. I think that's perfect to wrap it up then.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again for your time.
Cheers. Enjoy.